Next on Arizona 360, a temporary fix reopens the federal government for a few weeks.
The real problem you have here is that government can't plan.
Protected from deportation, but not for much longer.
And the first thing my daughter told me is, why?
One immigrant prepares to leave the life he built in Tucson.
That's what Donald Trump said, and they said that my dad has to leave.
Plus, steps taken this week in the fight against Arizona's opioid epidemic.
The urgency should be just as high for this epidemic as it would be for an infectious disease.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you for joining us. Tackling the opioid epidemic, the first major order of business for the state legislature. A bipartisan agreement, the unanimous passing of the Arizona Opioid Epidemic Act.
Many here today have been personally impacted.
Governor Doug Ducey signed the bill Friday morning. Since June, at least 800 people have died from an opioid overdose. That's about 3 lives lost each day. Dr. Daniel Dirksen oversees the Center for Rural Health at the University of Arizona, which just received a $2 million federal grant to reduce opioid deaths. We asked him how new legislation begins to address the crisis.
This is a public health approach to a very difficult issue. So you want to do some things on enforcement and make sure that the enforcement's there. You want to do some things on education to make sure individuals and their family members really understand what's available to them. This is something that is a nonpartisan issue. This is something that will take efforts on all fronts, and people have to really look at, here's the things within my sphere of control as a prescribing provider, as an individual, as a pharmacy, as a state agency. Here's the things we can help with, but we can't just do it in our own areas. We have to make sure that we're looking at the data, we're identifying places and areas where we need to make further interventions, because I don't think this will all be done in one fell swoop.
State lawmakers approved some steps in a special session this week. Among them, requiring prescribers to only give patients 5 days' worth of opioids if it's the patient's first prescription for the drug in an attempt to prevent addiction. Some exemptions include cancer patients or those recovering from traumatic injury.
It's a tricky balance to make sure that that you don't become so strict in these regulations that people don't get the treatment that they need. There's something like 88,000 licensed health providers in the state of Arizona that can prescribe these controlled substances, including opioids and benzodiazepines, things like Vicodin and Percocet, and then on the benzodiazepines, things like Valium. There's only about 150 individuals who are certified to be able to give medication-assisted treatment to help people addicted to opioids get off of them through drugs like Suboxone. So we need to strike a better balance of what's appropriate. There's been a real effort to involve the prescribing community.
Other measures, $10 million to help treat addiction for the uninsured or underinsured, and expanded access to naloxone, a drug that helps reverse the effects of an opioid overdose and can be life-saving.
So first responders are being trained, emergency medical services personnel, police, fire department personnel, that may be the first individuals to arrive on the scene. But very often the very first responders are family members that may find their sibling or their spouse or a friend in an overdose situation. They know that they have a opioid use disorder, that they're addicted, and then suddenly, they see an overdose in the house. Most of the overdoses occur in a personal residence in this state.
Since the governor declared an opioid emergency last June, Arizona's Department of Health Services tracked at least 5,200 suspected opioid overdoses, with more than 990 in Pima County and at least 3,100 in Maricopa County.
It would be easy to dismiss this and say, well, we should just incarcerate people who have addiction problems. And that's a very expensive way to approach it. What I'd compare it to is if there was 2 or 3 people dying a day, there's something like 100 to 270 overdoses per week in Arizona. If this were Ebola virus or people being exposed to that, you would get a whole different level of urgency. But the urgency should be just as high for this epidemic as it would be for an infectious disease. This isn't just affecting a certain segment of the population. This has penetrated our high schools, our grade schools, wherever you live in the state, whether it's rural or urban, Phoenix, Tucson. So we have to really take this to a whole different level if we're going to make an impact.
Congress kicked the can down the road, so to speak, passing a short-term budget deal to end the partial federal government shutdown that lasted 3 days. The clock, though, is still ticking. Another potential shutdown is less than 2 weeks away on February 8th. The continuing resolution is a third stopgap measure enacted since September in lieu of a deal to fund the government for the entire fiscal year. For insight on these short-term solutions, we turn to H. Brinton Millward, head of the School of Government and Public Policy at the University of Arizona. If you would explain these continuing resolutions, how effective are they?
Well, they're continuing. I suppose they're effective in the sense that you keep the government running for a certain period of time, but it just basically, if it's a 30-day or a 60-day or whatever, you've got the same problem at the end of the line.
There's no real work that it accomplishes.
Well, it keeps the government running. It's better than a shutdown, but only better than a shutdown. I think the real problem you have here is that government can't plan. It costs money to plan for a shutdown. It costs money to make up for the time you were shut down. And so government performs even more poorly than it had before. And there are plenty of governments around the world that don't operate this way. Belgium, Netherlands, all these other countries, they don't necessarily do this because even though they don't have a government, they'll simply have the equivalent of a continuing resolution and they'll keep on funding at the current level without shutting government services down. But I think in sort of the current era, you've seen more polarized government. And when there's more polarized government, there's really very little agreement on anything.
One of the arguments that we've heard over the last few days, what happens to our military? What happens to the families waiting to cash the check to pay the mortgage? Is that really a reality of these shutdowns?
I assume it would be if the shutdown went on long enough. I think immediately, you're not going to see major changes at the borders. Those people are essential. One of the things I think that would be most hard to take if you were a federal employee now would be to be classified as a non-essential employee. Essential employees are those people who basically have to continue doing their jobs, the intelligence community and the Border Patrol and the military and others. But eventually that becomes a problem as well. We've talked about other shutdowns in Arizona. If we shut down the Grand Canyon and other tourist attractions, Governor Ducey has said that we might try to find some way to have the state take over the operation of that because it brings in a tremendous amount of money. So there's a trickle-down effect to state government, to local government from these shutdowns, even though they're open.
How is this possible that we have a nation with such a strong history, a rich democracy, and the government has just decided we can't function together at the moment?
The notion in a democracy is there is a legitimate opposition, and they may run things next time, we may run things next time. Now it seems to be more of a zero-sum fight on both sides. And that doesn't do much for encouraging people to vote. It doesn't do very much for encouraging people to think of institutions as behaving in the public interest.
Ending the shutdown opened the door to a potential deal on DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. It protects from deportation hundreds of thousands of immigrants who came to the country as children. The president planned to end the program in March, but a federal court ordered it to remain in place as legal arguments continue. Support for a short-term spending bill came with a promise from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to openly debate legislation that addresses immigration and border security. One bill from the so-called Gang of Six that includes Arizona Senator Jeff Flake offers a path to citizenship for Dreamers and provides $1.6 billion for a border wall. Senator Flake said he expects a vote before the next shutdown deadline.
Now I can sign it. Thank you.
Hardships in their home countries led the U.S. to welcome another set of immigrants for many years, though not for much longer. The Trump administration chose not to extend the temporary protected status granted to hundreds of thousands of immigrants from several nations that includes El Salvador. Nearly 200,000 people from El Salvador have until September of next year to leave the U.S. or face deportation. In Tucson, that includes Juan Carlos Pineda, who left his home country nearly 20 years ago.
Come on, guys. Careful. Okay, guys, ready?
Every other week, this is Juan Carlos Pineda's life.
Put the seatbelt. So what's going on with the sign project, Soralia? What's about?
The green apple floated because it has 25% of air.
In air?
It's when he's happiest, cooking for his kids, helping them with their homework.
He got a good day.
Zedalia's 10 and Samuel is 6. Pineda's a single dad, recently divorced.
Start with the homework. Samuel, I got your book. You have to read it right now.
This is their new normal.
Okay?
Remember the pencil? Did I leave it in here?
What pencil?
The Pinedas are like most other families living in Tucson, yet very different. Pineda owns a small business, an industrial engineer, a certified electrician with a handful of employees.
It's good to cook today.
This 42-year-old is an El Salvadorian national who moved to the U.S. about 20 years ago.
The reason I live in 2000 is because I got a lot of violence up there, and then they tried to kill me because we have business. So they asked over there actually to my mom every month to pay rent to keep the business open. If you don't pay, you don't open your business. That's one of the reasons I moved.
Papi,
Yes.
we were learning about...
The federal government extended temporary protected status to El Salvadorians in 2001 following earthquakes that killed over 1,000 people and caused significant damage. Pineda's among an estimated 1,800 El Salvadorians with TPS living in Arizona. All that, though, is about to change. In early January, the Trump administration announced the program would end, an uncertainty this family is struggling to accept.
The first thing my daughter told me is, why? So I said, why what? Why you need to go back in your country? I have to go back there too? I say, no. And that's one of those things is broken the heart completely. It's 0.34. You got 0.3 is less.
Pineda was married to the children's mother, a U.S. citizen. He applied for residency but never finished the process because he says that meant returning to his home country, something he couldn't afford to do. Time away meant money lost. So he continued to run his business and raise a family.
I see a lot of kids, they born here, they grow up in here. They don't have that expectation to the future. 125 is one, look.
He wants something different for his kids. Pineda says that begins with transparency. This is what he's told them.
Yeah, and here in the U.S., it's a free place until Donald Trump came. It's not a free place no more. That's what Donald Trump said, and they said that my dad has to leave to somewhere far for he could help others, and I don't want him to leave.
They say that wherever you go, Father, I follow you. Say no. I know what happened with me with them, so.
They know these days are precious. They're making the most out of every moment.
That he's kind. Yeah, he's a very good dad.
It's especially hard on Zedalia, who promises to teach her little brother everything she's learned from her dad.
Never talk to strangers. How to defend himself or to finish his homework.
One and a third.
Pineda's taking it one day at a time, thinking every minute, though, about the future.
As I say, they got 18 months more, but I have to do plan B. My plan B is work, do the best I can, do right now for my kid, save the money, and say, okay, I have to move my business to a different place. Maybe Canada, maybe Guatemala, but I have to move.
And he says it won't be El Salvador.
In that moment right now, I got just my mom up there. The only for me is take my kid up there. I can't. Because it's just, I know, put my first foot and inside my country, my kid is in dangerous. I have to looking for another option. I actually got family is a citizen from Canada. And they told me, you want to come in here? We open the door for you. I know I can do the electrical in another country, But the base and broken my heart is my kid.
Giving them the life, the opportunity he didn't have.
I think it's the American dream is you have to go forward in your capacity. Do the best you can yourself. Not depend from the fathers. Not depend from the government. It's depend yourself. That's American dream. It's hard. It's not easy. We have to go a lot of steps to go there. It's when the people say, you got the American dream? No. You make the American dream every day. Now I can sign it. Thank you.
Nearly 20 years, anything but temporary.
Vamos a ver con la luz.
The same measure that keeps the government running for a few more weeks did produce a long-term solution to the Children's Health Insurance Program known as CHIP. CHIP was reauthorized for another 6 years after funds expired in September. Christopher Conover has more about what that means for healthcare providers in Tucson.
El Rio Health is a community health center serving Tucson and southern Arizona. It serves 35,000 children, 6,000 of whom rely on CHIP.
That is really the health insurance for children whose families don't qualify for Medicaid and don't have access to commercial insurance or marketplace insurance.
Primary care should start at a young age, and providers say programs like CHIP make that possible.
So it's essential that all children have at all moments in time safe access to health care. These kinds of things cannot be done in the emergency center. You know, I hear people saying, oh, well, you know, if you don't have health care, you can still go to the emergency center, and that's true. If you come to the emergency center, we will care for you there. But emergency centers cannot provide vaccines. They can't provide sports physicals. They can't ensure that children can have healthy, productive days in school so that they can move forward and become productive members of society.
Congress solved the CHIP funding issue for 6 years when members agreed on a bill to reopen the federal government. When CHIP ran out in September, so did community health center funding. Congress has not reinstated those dollars.
But some of the smaller community health centers, this funding continuation could be up to 70% of their entire budget. So it could be a real game changer for smaller community health centers, many in rural areas, many new starts, where they may have to lay off staff. They may have to stop serving some of the uninsured population, or they may have to close certain services.
Currently, there are 164 community health centers in Arizona. El Rio is one of the largest in the country, so the loss of federal dollars is less dire. However, about 25% of the doctors at El Rio were recipients of federal community health scholarships when they were in medical school.
And what that means is that we could afford to go to medical school, go to our training programs under this funding grant, and know then that we could orient our careers around service in high needs, high risk areas.
In the nation's capital, community health funding has always been a bipartisan issue, partly due to the fact it's cost effective.
And I think here in Arizona, the last number I saw is that for a patient on Medicaid, their care is approximately $2,300 less a year than in the general population of various other providers.
Some members of Congress are hoping to restore the community health funding when the next continuing resolution is debated during the first part of February.
Funding lapses on Capitol Hill did not stop NAFTA renegotiations from happening in Montreal that will ultimately determine the future of hundreds of billions of dollars worth of trade between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. The 3 ports of entry in Nogales are the busiest in the state and one of the leading in the country, processing more than 1,300 trucks a day and yearly about 3 million cars and 7 million people. At the ports of entry in Nogales, Customs and Border Protection oversees about $16 billion worth of NAFTA-qualified goods a year. Another $17 million a year is non-NAFTA trade. Jeff Quern is the import specialist in Nogales.
We're on the commercial facility, the cargo dock. This is where exams occur for those shipments that have been directed to go in for exam. Obviously, not all shipments that cross the border are being examined. We have to use some discretion in what we examine and target, if you will, based off the data that we get prior to arrival, based off the intuition of the officer that's sitting in that primary processing booth. Based on agriculture issues. A lot of agriculture is required to come in for mandatory checks for pests and things like that to protect the domestic agriculture in this country.
And 60% of what we see here is related to NAFTA.
Roughly, that's the figure that's been tossed around in the past. It's a logical figure when you consider what is coming across the border. Manufactured goods from maquilas in Mexico in this area, produce from this area. Produce is going to qualify for NAFTA pretty much regardless. Anything that's grown or harvested or mined is going to qualify for NAFTA. Manufactured goods a little more difficult, but yeah, there's a high volume of NAFTA coming through this border.
But I mean, it is fair to say this is a byproduct, this expansion, because of NAFTA.
Sure. Well, and it's obvious you have a corridor that speaks to NAFTA. Trade has flourished because of NAFTA in this corridor. There's been a lot of emphasis on this port of entry. This is the largest land border port of entry in Arizona. For obvious reasons, this is the biggest corridor.
Inside the facility, Quirin explains how manufactured goods qualify for NAFTA.
This is the document that we use to verify the legitimacy of NAFTA claims, whether the good qualifies or not. This is the document that the trade has to use. Those customs consultants, the importing community, the exporters, everybody that touches NAFTA has to understand the contents of this book.
What sorts of hoops will a broker have to jump through alongside the company in Mexico to become a NAFTA client?
NAFTA is a claim that's made by the importer of record. In order to do that, they have to have a certificate of origin from the exporter of the goods. So if you want to import NAFTA qualifying machinery, for example, from Mexico, you need to find yourself an exporter in Mexico of NAFTA qualified machinery. A lot of times that relationship is one-to-one. It's a U.S. parent company who established a Mexican manufacturing facility, and therefore there is no issue with that. So what I have is an example of an imported good that comes through this port certified for NAFTA. The duty rate, if you're not claiming a special trade agreement, is 5.3% ad valorem, 5.3% of the declared value. So you multiply that by 5.3%, you get the duty that you're going to pay. Now the next question is, okay, I'm getting this from China, I'm paying 5.3% duty. What if I want to import this from Mexico, assuming it qualifies for NAFTA? I'm going to be paying 0% duty. If you want to qualify for NAFTA for this product, you have to have NAFTA originating copper or aluminum wire used in this good.
To get NAFTA's stamp of approval, the producer of the copper wire needs documented proof the copper rod it came from originated in a North American country. It's just one example of how the treaty works.
So what happens if a commodity comes through and it does not meet any of the criteria? So what's the penalty?
In this particular case, that's exactly what happened. We had an issue. We asked them to produce documentation, records, that can prove that the cable that was in the NAFTA qualified importations was in fact NAFTA qualifying cable. And they had a problem. They couldn't do that. And so they did the right thing. They said, well, we will assume that none of it was NAFTA qualifying, and they paid us the duties, taxes, and fees as if none of it had been claimed in the NAFTA. That's what responsible companies do. And in exchange for being open with us, then we are less likely to penalize them, for example. If we find out through other means that this has been going on, maybe an employee calls us up and says, hey, we understand there's a problem, I'm making you aware of this, whistleblower or something like that. That's a different scenario. Now we're into negligence, now we're into potential fraud, and they have significant penalties associated with them, depending on the goods.
I imagine you have seen contraband in NAFTA loads or NAFTA packages.
Yes.
So what happens then?
There's basically two scenarios. We have companies who are low-risk certified with customs. The program is called CTPAT, the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. It's a product of 9/11. It was a mechanism that we offered to the trade. We said, if you employ these recommended security procedures, CCTV in your facility, vetting of your employees, drug testing, making sure that you use transportation companies who have GPS tracking, who have security of their equipment overnight in the fenced yards, things like that. If you employ all these procedures, we're going to give you a low-risk certification. And what that means is that the information that they provide to us electronically prior to the arrival of the cargo is going to be looked at and scored differently. It's going to be looked at from a low-risk perspective. So in a scenario where you have a compromised shipment involving a low-risk certified company, the rules are a little different. We presume that you have taken the security measures that you that you had agreed to previously. The CTPAT office at headquarters is going to talk with that company and say, ensure us or prove to us that you had those security measures in place. Tell us what you're going to do to fix that scenario.
Companies that are not CTPAT certified and therefore aren't considered low risk go through a similar process with customs if one of their shipments is deemed compromised.
The expectation is going to be that you, as a trade party, are going to do the responsible thing and work with us to determine where the problem happened. Was it the transportation company, the driver, allowing the goods to be diverted? Was it the maquila, the manufacturing facility, allowing the goods to be loaded inside their facility? Those sorts of things. So regardless of the scenario, the customs expectation is that you're going to work with us to solve this problem.
NAFTA is not as simple to understand as many people think that it is. It's not some switch that you can just flip.
I think there's a misconception that NAFTA is just a carte blanche to import goods with zero duty. That's not the case. It's fairly complicated. It was a negotiated program. It has rules. The rules have to be obeyed. If customs finds out that you have not obeyed those rules, the consequences are pretty severe, depending on the duty rate involved.
Leaders in Arizona remain optimistic about a new NAFTA deal, and in recent years they've made inroads with officials in Sonora and Mexico City. Senior advisor to Governor Doug Ducey, Juan Ciscomani, told us how those gains are playing out in Arizona.
The good news here is that Governor Pavlovich has a very strong relationship with Mexico City, as we do with Washington, D.C. Now, the advantage that we have even on top of that is that Governor Ducey has developed a very strong relationship as well with Mexico City. Mexico sees the governor as a friend and as someone that has been able to find mutual common interest and shown mutual respect. And the conversations that are going on is, how do we strengthen this? How do we expand this? We haven't taken our foot off the pedal. We continue to go fast at this and go strong because our economy very much depends on that. With you're talking about almost $19 billion in trade between what we do with Canada and what we do with Mexico.
Well, you talk about expanding things. What sorts of things are in place that you want to see continue to grow?
Investment on the border and everything that has to do with the flow of goods across the border in a safe and a speedy way, it has been our priority. For example, we have unified cargo processing now in Nogales and in all our ports in Arizona, and that has really cut the wait time for produce or anything else coming across by about 80%. Of the cut of time.
The recent announcement about the Sky Bridge, how exactly does that work here in our state?
Very similar to the unified cargo processing that we have at the ports by land. We have this now at the airport for air cargo as well. This essentially makes us the e-commerce hub for exports to Mexico and very soon Latin America as well. You're going to have U.S. federal authorities and Mexican federal authorities under the same roof doing inspections for air cargo leaving the country. And that's going to happen at Mesa Gateway Airport. What that means for Mexico is now they have availability for next day shipping on things they didn't before.
Economically, can Arizona sustain NAFTA without the federal government's involvement?
Well, it's a very interesting question because we get that question often. What would happen if the United States pulls out of NAFTA or that goes away? We in Arizona have something very unique called the Arizona-Mexico Commission. The Arizona-Mexico Commission, as we call it AMC, was founded in 1959. So you're talking about 36 years before NAFTA was even signed into an agreement. We saw the value of the trade relationship with Mexico, which the AMC enjoys with 15 different committees, from mining to agriculture, to the arts, to social services, to the economy. So we had a trade and a relationship with Mexico before NAFTA. It has flourished during NAFTA, and we hope that it's going to continue to get better after whatever comes out of this. And this is exactly why leadership matters so much, because we really don't know what's going to happen. We can't fully speculate what's going to happen. We feel in the administration pretty optimistic that the White House is going to see what they need to see, and so is Mexico City, and so is Canada, and they're all going to be able to come to an agreement because it's something that benefits everyone.
That's all for this week. If you have any feedback, send us an email, arizona360@azpm.org. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.